The Munsters gave America something it had never seen before. A family of monsters living in the suburbs who genuinely couldn't figure out why everyone kept running away from them. 2 seasons, 70 episodes, and a footprint on television history that 60 years still hasn't managed to erase. Did you know that one of the show's lead actors graduated from Harvard University and wrote children's books, even though the whole world knew him as a 7-foot green monster? Did you know that the original actress cast as Marilyn Munster was so convinced the show would flop that she deliberately caused scenes on set just to get herself fired? Did you know that the man who played Grandpa actually held a real PhD in child psychology from Columbia University, and once opened his own restaurant in Greenwich Village? Today we're going back to 1313 Mockingbird Lane. We're going to talk about the people who lived there, what they did after the cameras stopped rolling, what they struggled with, and who we've lost along the way. This is the cast of the Munsters, then and now, in 2026. Number 1, Yvonne Carlo as Lily Munster. She was already a bona fide Hollywood star, long before she ever put on a black wig and vampire makeup. Yvonne Carlo was a household name throughout the 1950s. Most people remember her as Sephora, the wife of Moses, in Cecil B. DeMille's epic The 10 Commandments in 1956. So why on earth would a woman at that level of stardom say yes to a quirky monster sitcom on CBS? Because Hollywood had changed. By 1964, the industry had no idea what to do with women over 40. Yvonne was 42 years old when she walked onto the set of The Munsters for the first time. A lot of people saw it as a step down. She didn't see it that way at all. Born Margaret Yvette Middleton on September 1st, 1922, in Vancouver, Canada, she moved to Los Angeles as a teenager chasing a dream. It worked. Through the 1940s and 1950s, she worked non-stop. Westerns, romances, biblical epics. She even won the title of Miss Venice Beach back in 1938. When CBS came to her with the role of Lily Munster, nobody expected the show to be anything special. Originally, the part had gone to Joan Marshall, but Marshall looked too much like Morticia Addams from the Addams Family over on ABC. Yvonne was the backup plan. She turned out to be the perfect choice. 71 episodes, 2 full seasons. Lily Munster, devoted wife, nurturing vampire mother, and the only thing standing between that household and total anarchy. Yvonne played her with so much warmth and genuine charm that you kept forgetting you were watching a creature of the night. After the show wrapped in 1966, she kept working, though the projects got smaller. In 1971, she appeared on Broadway in Follies and walked away with a Tony Award, a real, serious theatrical recognition. Not bad for someone Hollywood had written off. Her personal life wasn't easy. She was married twice, most notably to stuntman Robert Morgan from 1955 to 1974. She had 2 sons. In 1981, she returned to the role of Lily Munster in the TV movie The Munsters' Revenge, and audiences went absolutely wild for her. By the 1990s, her health was deteriorating. Congestive heart failure, multiple strokes. She spent her final years in a care facility. Yvonne Carlo passed away on January 8, 2007, at the age of 84. In 2026, she would have been 103 years old. She's been gone for almost 2 decades now. But Lily Munster? Lily Munster is immortal, which is exactly how it should be for a vampire. Number 2, Al Lewis as Grandpa. His real name was probably Albert Meister, but Al Lewis himself told so many different versions of his own backstory, depending on the day and his mood, that nobody could ever quite nail it down. He might tell you he was born in 1910, or 1923. The truth was probably somewhere in between. The date most people accept is April 30th, 1923, in Brooklyn, New York. That alone tells you everything. Al Lewis loved building a mythology around himself, and few people were ever better at it. Before the Munsters, he'd done it all. Circus performer, clown, burlesque actor, Broadway, television in the 1950s, and eventually the role of Officer Leo Schnauzer in Car 54, Where Are You?, right alongside Fred Gwynne. That's where the partnership was born. By the time The Munsters was being cast in 1964, Al and Fred were already a proven double act. Their timing, their chemistry, their complete comfort working off each other, all of that carried straight into the new show. and Grandpa Munster became one of the most beloved characters in the history of American television. When Grandpa first appeared on screen in 1964, Al was somewhere around 41 years old, though he almost certainly would have given you a different number with that signature sideways grin. 72 episodes. Grandpa was down in the basement cooking up insane potions, launching into endless monologues about the old days with Dracula, and generally being the primary source of chaos at 1313 Mockingbird Lane. Lewis played him like he was having the time of his life, because he probably was. After the show, Al opened a restaurant called Grandpa's in Greenwich Village. It became a neighborhood institution. He waited tables himself, held court with anyone who came in, told stories. The place ran for years. What a lot of people didn't know, Al Lewis was deeply political. In 2001, he ran for governor of New York on the Green Party ticket. He got nearly 40,000 votes. His platform included legalizing marijuana and bringing American troops home from overseas. Grandpa Munster running for governor. It sounded like a lost episode of the show. He also held a legitimate PhD in child psychology from Columbia University, wrote 2 children's books, appeared regularly as a political commentator. Al Lewis died on February 3, 2006. The official record puts him at 82 years old, though knowing Al, you can't entirely rule out that even that was a bit of a story. His death hit fans hard. By 2026, it's been 20 years without him. But flip on an old episode and Grandpa is right there in that basement, stirring something he probably shouldn't be. Number 3, Beverly Owen as Marilyn Munster, episodes 1 to 13. The first Marilyn Munster was Beverly Owen, and the story of how she left the show is one of the strangest and most human stories in the history of American television. Born Beverly Jane Ogg on May 13, 1937, in Ottumwa, Iowa, she studied acting, made her way to New York, landed small roles, and for a while worked as a secretary at CBS. When the Munsters came along in 1964, she took the part of Marilyn, fully convinced the show would be canceled within weeks. She was 27 years old. Marilyn was the only normal-looking member of the Munster family, a beautiful, sweet-natured niece whom her own relatives considered tragically plain. The irony was the engine of the whole joke, and it worked every single time. But Beverly was miserable. Her boyfriend John Stone was back in New York. She was stuck in Los Angeles. By multiple accounts, she was falling apart on set. Some sources say Al Lewis and Fred Gwynne went to the producers and personally lobbied for her release. Others say Beverly herself engineered breakdowns and outbursts just to force them to let her go. Either way, after 13 episodes of the first season, she walked. She married John Stone on June 27, 1964. Stone would go on to become one of the original creators of Sesame Street. Beverly stepped away from acting entirely, went back to New York, and essentially disappeared from public life. Her last credited screen role was in 1972, a small part on the soap opera Another World. After that, silence, a divorce in 1974, a quiet life away from the cameras. In 1989, she earned a master's degree in early American history, 2 daughters. In the 1990s and 2000s, she made occasional appearances in documentaries about the Munsters, as herself this time, no wig, no makeup. Beverly Owen died on February 21, 2019, at her home in Bennington, Vermont. She was 81, ovarian cancer, a battle she'd kept entirely private since her diagnosis in 2017. Her daughter Polly confirmed the news. Her co-star Butch Patrick posted on Facebook, "Beautiful Beverly Owen has left us. What a sweet soul. I had the biggest crush on her." In 2026, she would have been 88 years old. She chose a quiet, meaningful life far from Hollywood. And from everything we know, she was at peace with that. Number 4, Pat Priest as Marilyn Munster, episodes 14 to 70. When Beverly Owen walked off the lot, the producers needed a replacement, fast. They found Pat Priest almost by accident. She was up in the San Francisco Bay Area when Hollywood called. She tested on a Wednesday, got the call on Thursday, signed contracts on Friday, started filming on Monday. That is show business in its purest form. Patricia Ann Priest was born on August 15, 1936, in Bountiful, Utah. Her mother, Ivy Baker Priest, served as Treasurer of the United States under President Eisenhower from 1953 to 1961. Every piece of American paper currency printed during those years bears her signature. Pat grew up with one of the most prominent mothers in the country, and yet all she wanted was to be an actress. Pat was 28 when she stepped into the role of Marilyn. The transition was so seamless that most viewers never even noticed the switch. 57 episodes. Marilyn, under her interpretation, had a gentleness and a sincerity that became the show's quiet, emotional anchor. After the series ended in 1966, one of the more memorable chapters of her post-Munsters life involved Elvis Presley. While filming Easy Come, Easy Go with him in 1967, she mentioned she was shopping for a new car. Elvis sold her his Cadillac for $3,000. She kept it for a while, then traded it in. Years later, she admitted, "That could have been my retirement plan." Her acting career gradually wound down. Small guest spots on Bewitched, Perry Mason, The Mary Tyler Moore Show. In 1966, she was dropped from the theatrical Munsters film. They said she was too old to play Marilyn. She was 29. It stung. She eventually moved to Idaho in the 1980s and retired from acting. She and her sister ran an antique shop. She restored and sold homes. A full, grounded, contented life. In 2001, she was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. She went through treatment. The cancer went into remission. In 2022, she came back to the Munsters in a small way, voicing the Transylvania Airlines announcer in Rob Zombie's reboot film. A small moment, but a meaningful one. In 2026, Pat Priest turns 90 years old. She lives quietly in Eagle, Idaho. She still occasionally makes appearances at classic TV fan conventions. When asked about her life, she has said simply, "I've done everything I wanted to do and gone everywhere I wanted to go. Whatever comes next is all just a bonus." That might be the most graceful exit from Hollywood we've ever heard of. Number 5, Mel Blanc as the voice of Charlie the Raven. You have heard this man's voice thousands of times without ever knowing his name. Mel Blanc was the voice. Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, Porky Pig, Tweety Bird, Barney Rubble on the Flintstones. He didn't just provide voices for animated characters. He was the sound of an entire era of American entertainment. Born Melvin Jerome Blanc on May 30th, 1908, in San Francisco, he could imitate other people's voices with unsettling accuracy from childhood. Kids at school mocked him for it. He didn't care. By 1937, he was at Warner Brothers, and over the next several decades, he created characters that the entire world knows by heart. On the Munsters, Mel took on a special supporting role. Charlie the Raven was the bird who lived in the Munsters' cuckoo clock and occasionally croaked "Nevermore" in the spirit of Poe. When Charlie got too snarky, Herman would throw something at him. Mel voiced the Raven through most of the first season. He was around 56 years old when the show launched. Here's the story most people don't know. In 1961, Mel Blanc was in a catastrophic car accident on Sunset Boulevard. Doctors weren't sure he would survive. While he lay in a coma, a physician in desperation stopped trying to reach Mel Blanc the man and addressed Bugs Bunny instead. And the patient answered in Bugs Bunny's voice. It's one of the most extraordinary moments in the history of American medicine. After the Munsters, Mel never slowed down. The Flintstones, Looney Tunes shorts, commercials, holiday specials. He was so committed that even in the hospital, still in a body cast, he recorded voice work lying flat on his back. Mel Blanc died on July 10, 1989, in Los Angeles. He was 81 years old, heart disease and emphysema. His headstone reads, "That's all, folks." Porky Pig's sign-off. There is no more perfect epitaph. In 2026, he would have been 117 years old, but his voice plays somewhere in the world every single day. That is what real immortality looks like. Number 6, Bob Hastings. As the voice of Charlie the Raven, where Mel Blanc was the god of animation, Bob Hastings was the reliable, unflappable professional that television ran on. He stepped in to voice Charlie the Raven in the episodes where Blanc was occupied elsewhere. A quiet, competent handoff that most viewers never even clocked. Born Robert William Hastings on April 18, 1925, in Brooklyn, New York, he came up through radio and moved smoothly into early television. His most recognized regular role was Chief Petty Officer Hastings, known as Cardi, on the naval comedy McHale's Navy, which ran from 1962 to 1966, the same years as the Munsters. That overlap was why Blanc needed backup, and why Hastings was the natural choice. His voice had a particular quality: warm, slightly raspy, perfectly suited to a bird that lives in a clock and pokes its head out just long enough to make a wisecrack before retreating. Viewers barely noticed any difference. After the Munsters, Hastings built one of the most quietly impressive voice acting careers in animation history. His defining role came later: Commissioner Gordon in Batman, the animated series from 1992 to 1995, widely considered the definitive animated version of Batman. In that role, Hastings found unexpected weight and authority. He was no longer a supporting player. He was essential. He worked in dozens of TV series, voiced commercials, did radio theater. That kind of range was his whole career, always working, always delivering. Bob Hastings died on June 30th, 2014 in Alexandria, Virginia. He was 89 years old, Alzheimer's disease. In 2026, he would have turned 100. He's remembered most as Commissioner Gordon and as the reliable second voice of one of the strangest and most charming bird characters in TV history. Number 7. Paul Lynde as Dr. Edward H. Dudley, episodes 4, 6, 19. You couldn't miss him. That unmistakable nasal delivery, that sideways glance, that pause before a punchline. A pause that always carried something just a little too sharp, a little too knowing. Paul Lynde was one of the most recognizable comic performers in America through the 1960s and 1970s, and he was hiding in plain sight the entire time. Paul Edward Lynde was born on June 13, 1926, in Mount Vernon, Ohio. He was drawn to performance from childhood. He studied at Northwestern University, in the same drama program as Cloris Leachman and Patricia Neal. His Broadway debut came in 1952. His breakout was the role of Harry McAfee in Bye Bye Birdie on Broadway in 1960, a performance he reprised in the 1963 film version alongside Dick Van Dyke and Anne Margaret. On The Munsters, Lynde appeared in 3 episodes as the family's hapless physician, Dr. Edward Dudley. The character was so severely nearsighted that he genuinely couldn't get a clear look at Herman, which generated its own particular brand of horror comedy chaos. Paul was 38 years old when he first appeared in the role, but his real pop culture throne was the Hollywood Squares, where he occupied the center square from 1968 to 1979. The one-liners he delivered were quoted for decades. Many of them pointedly suggested a lifestyle that, in those years, simply could not be spoken about directly on American television. Paul Lynde never publicly came out as gay. The press, for its part, largely looked the other way. His personal life was shadowed by tragedy. Friends died under troubling circumstances. He struggled with alcoholism and drug use for years. By most accounts, he had finally gotten sober not long before his death. But the damage had already been done. Paul Lynde died on January 10, 1982, at his home in Beverly Hills. He was 55 years old, heart attack. The coroner noted that his heart was in the condition of an 88-year-old man. A neighbor stopped by for a birthday gathering and found he wasn't answering the door. In 2026, he would have been nearly 100 years old. His Hollywood Squares quips still circulate online, sharp, daring, ahead of their time. Paul Lynde was always about 10 steps ahead of whatever room he was in. Number 8, Dom DeLuise as Dr. Edward H. Dudley, episode 55. When the show needed Dr. Dudley one more time and Paul Lynde wasn't available, they called in a man who was, by all available evidence, physically incapable of not being funny. Dom DeLuise radiated joy. He couldn't turn it off. Mel Brooks famously built 2 extra days into every film schedule when working with him. Not for reshoots, but for the laughter that would make it impossible to get anything done. Born Dominic DeLuise on August 1, 1933, in Brooklyn, New York, to Italian immigrant parents, his father was a garbage collector. Dom grew up in modesty and warmth. He went to the High School of Performing Arts, then studied at Tufts University on a biology track before the stage pulled him back completely. On The Munsters, he appeared in a single episode, number 55, playing the ill-fated Dr. Dudley. He was around 32 years old, 1 episode. But could Dom DeLuise make one episode feel small? Absolutely not. His real legacy was elsewhere. The Mel Brooks films, Blazing Saddles, Silent Movie, History of the World Part 1, Robin Hood, Men in Tights. The Burt Reynolds comedies, The Cannonball Run, Smokey and the Bandit 2. Don Bluth animation, The Secret of NIMH, An American Tale, All Dogs Go to Heaven. He gave warmth to everything he touched, and the man could cook. He wrote 2 cookbooks, hosted legendary dinner parties at his home in Pacific Palisades. The spreads were reportedly extraordinary, soup to dessert with everything in between. His passion for food became as much a part of his identity as his comedy. Dom DeLuise died on May 4, 2009, in Santa Monica. He was 75 years old. Kidney failure, complications from cancer. His wife Carol and their 3 sons, Peter, Michael, and David, all of whom became actors, were at his side. Mel Brooks said of him, "Dom DeLuise was big in every way. He created so much joy and laughter. He will be missed in a very big way." In 2026, he would have been 92. Hollywood doesn't make them like that too often, but when it does, they tend to leave the place a little brighter than they found it. Number 9, John Carradine as Mr. Gateman, Herman's boss at the funeral parlor. Episodes 37-62. The voice that could make your skin crawl from across the room. The face carved out of sharp angles and decades of hard living. John Carradine was one of the most prolific and immediately recognizable character actors in the history of American cinema. 351 credits in film and television. That is not a typo. 351. Born Richmond Reed. Carradine on February 5, 1906, in Manhattan, he had a childhood defined by loss and escape. His father died of tuberculosis when John was just 2. His stepfather was abusive. At 14, he ran away. He drifted. He scraped by, drawing quick sketch portraits for pocket change. Eventually, he made it to Los Angeles. Cecil B. DeMille discovered him, first just for voice work because that baritone was extraordinary, and then for full roles. John Ford put him in his stock company, The Grapes of Wrath in 1940, Preacher Casey, A Role for the Ages. On the Munsters, Carradine appeared in 2 episodes as Mr. Gateman, the funeral parlor owner who was technically Herman's boss. The irony is delicious. A man who had played Count Dracula multiple times in Universal horror films was now the supervisor of Frankenstein's monster. He was 58 years old when he filmed the first of those episodes. What few people know is that Carradine was the original first choice to play Herman Munster himself, and turned it down. He never stopped working. Low-budget horror, Shakespeare on Broadway, television guest spots across 4 decades, Kung Fu, where he appeared alongside his son David. Severe rheumatoid arthritis gradually seized his body. He kept going anyway. In November 1988, John Carradine, 82 years old, stopped in Milan on his way back from a film shoot in Africa. He wanted to see the sculptures at the Duomo. The elevator was out of order. He climbed the stairs. His heart gave out. His reported last words, "Milan, what a beautiful place to die." In 2026, he would have been 120 years old. His sons, David, Keith, and Robert, carried on the family tradition. An entire acting dynasty, launched by a man who ran away from home at 14. Number 10. Chet Stratton as Clyde Thornton, Herman's co-worker. Episodes 53-61. Chet Stratton was the kind of actor that television ran on. The character man, the reliable supporting player, the face you recognize even when you can't place the name. He was never a star, but television couldn't function without people exactly like him. Born Chester Clancy Stratton on November 25, 1916, in Walton, New York, he built his career across theater, radio, and early television. His face appeared in dozens of shows throughout the 1950s and 1960s, Perry Mason, The Old House, Gunsmoke. On the Munsters, Stratton played Clyde Thornton, a co-worker at the Gateman, Goodberry, and Graves funeral parlor. Clyde spent his first episode pranking and belittling Herman, until he tried to punch the 7-foot Frankenstein monster in the jaw and broke his own hand. In his second appearance, Clyde tried using Herman's poetry to woo a woman he had a crush on. It did not go as planned. He was around 48 years old when he filmed those episodes. He kept working through the late 1960s and into the 1970s, doing what working character actors do. Showing up, doing the work, going home, never the centerpiece, always necessary. Chet Stratton died on March 14, 1975. He was 58 years old. In 2026, he would have been 109. The small roles he played are the bricks of great television. Without Clyde Thornton, 1313 Mockingbird Lane loses a little bit of its world. Number 11, Bryan O'Byrne as Uriah, Calvin, and other funeral parlor employees. Bryan O'Byrne was cut from the same cloth as Chet Stratton, a working actor who built a career out of being exactly what a production needed in any given moment. Irish by heritage, O'Byrne worked his way through American theater and television from the late 1950s onward. His specialty was ordinary men in extraordinary situations, precisely the skill set a show like the Munsters required on a regular basis. On the show, he appeared in multiple episodes playing various employees at the funeral parlor, Uriah, Calvin, and others. Each time, the premise was identical. A normal person, trying to do their job, suddenly in the immediate vicinity of Herman Munster. That alone was the joke, and O'Byrne knew exactly how to play it. He was around 45 during filming. He continued working in television through the 1960s and into the early 1970s. Records on his later years are sparse, as is often the case with character actors of that era who never sought the spotlight. By available accounts, Bryan O'Byrne passed away in 1982. In 2026, he would have been over 100 years old. The small roles he filled were the connective tissue of the show. Without Uriah and his colleagues, the world of Mockingbird Lane is thinner, less real, less alive. Number 12, Joan Marshall as Phoebe Munster, the first Lily who never made it to air. Here's a chapter most Munsters fans have never heard told properly. Before Lily Munster was Lily Munster, she was Phoebe. Joan Marshall was the actress cast as the Munster family matriarch in the original 1964 test pilot. She appeared alongside Fred Gwynne and a young actor named Nate Derman in the very first presentation CBS was shown, before the show had a title, before it had a network order, before it had almost anything. And then she was replaced. The reason given publicly: she looked too much like Carolyn Jones's Morticia Addams over on ABC's The Addams Family. Both shows were heading to fall primetime. CBS couldn't have their monster mom looking like the competition's monster mom. Yvonne Carlo came in, the character was renamed Lily, and the rest is television history. Born in 1931, Marshall was around 32 years old at the time of the pilot. She had already built a modest career in westerns and television dramas, sometimes performing under the name Jean Marchand. After her Munsters pilot was shelved, she continued working, and actually appeared as Phoebe Munster in one first-season episode, reimagined as Herman's aunt. She was married to the legendary director John Huston, one of the greatest filmmakers in American cinema history. Their relationship isn't prominently documented in most sources, but it surfaces in the memoirs of contemporaries from the period. Joan Marshall passed away in 2009 at around 77 years old. In 2026, she would have been in her mid-90s. Her place in the Munsters story is the road not taken, the door that opened for 2 weeks and then quietly closed. But those forks in the road are what make TV history what it is. Number 13, Happy Derman. Nate Derman as the first Eddie Munster, the one who never aired. One more forgotten story from before the cameras ever started rolling. Before Butch Patrick, there was another Eddie. His name was Nate Derman. In the pilot credits, he appeared as Happy Derman. He played Eddie Munster in the very first test presentation filmed for CBS, and he didn't make it past that single showcase. The feedback from CBS was pointed. Derman's Eddie was too hostile, too sharp-edged, too close to a genuinely unpleasant child, nasty in a way that didn't read as funny, just uncomfortable. The network wanted a kid with sweetness. Derman's version apparently had none. When Butch Patrick came in, the contrast was immediate. Patrick brought a boyish openness to the role, a kid who was strange, sure, but lovable. That warmth was the whole difference between a character who worked and one who didn't. Almost nothing is known about what happened to Nate Derman after that. A few small projects in the early 1960s. Then he vanished from the records entirely. the fate of so many child actors whose one big shot didn't pan out. His story is a reminder of how paper-thin the line is. One casting meeting, one network note, one decision. Somewhere there's a version of this show where Happy Derman grew up as Eddie Munster. In this one, he didn't, and the whole show was better for it, even if that doesn't make the story any less bittersweet. Number 14, Butch Patrick as Eddie Munster. He was 11 years old the first time they put the makeup on him. A little werewolf boy in a velvet suit with pointy ears and a widow's peak, living in a house full of monsters and wondering why the whole neighborhood kept screaming. Butch Patrick, born Patrick Allen Lilly on August 2nd, 1953, in Inglewood, California, nearly missed this role entirely. He was living at his grandmother's house in Geneseo, Illinois, when his agent fought to get him a screen test. He flew straight from the airport to the studio, did a cold read with Yvonne de Carlo. By Wednesday, he was on set. His teeth helped him get the part, literally. When asked how he landed the role of Eddie, he said, "My fangs were my own teeth. Even when I closed my mouth, they still stuck out. I was a little smaller than the other kids, and that played well against Herman's height." 71 episodes. Eddie was the heart of the show for younger audiences. A sweet, guileless little monster kid who genuinely couldn't understand why the world outside his front door was always terrified of his family. Butch played him with real warmth. And little Eddie ended up mattering more than almost any adult character on the show. The years after the Munsters didn't go as planned. As a teenager, he kept working. Lidsville on ABC, Disney TV films, the role of Milo in the animated fantasy The Phantom Tollbooth. But by the mid-1970s, the work dried up. He was no longer a cute kid. The image hadn't scaled. What came next is something he's spoken about openly. About 40 years of substance abuse, alcohol and drugs, financial instability, a life without direction. He survived cancer, he survived himself, and eventually he found his way back. Today, Butch Patrick has been clean and sober for nearly a decade. He married Layla Murray in 2016. He works with people struggling with addiction. He makes the convention circuit, showing up in the actual Munster coach, the original family car that now belongs to him. He is the last surviving principal cast member who still actively carries the torch for the show. In 2026, Butch Patrick turns 73 years old. He's the last one standing from the main cast. Everyone else has gone. But Eddie Munster is still here. Sometimes the smallest monster in the house turns out to be the toughest one to put down. Number 15, Fred Gwynne as Herman Munster. 6'5", 70 pounds of makeup. That was Herman Munster, a gentle giant who scared everyone he ever met and couldn't for the life of him understand why. Fred Gwynne built one of the most beloved characters in American television history, and then spent the rest of his life trying to outrun him. Frederick Hubbard Gwynne was born on July 10, 1926 in New York City. His father was a stockbroker. The family was comfortable. Fred attended the elite Groton School, served in the U.S. Navy as a radio man during World War II, and then enrolled at Harvard. He graduated in 1951 with a degree in English literature, and during his time there, he was active in campus theater, including a memorable stint in the Hasty Pudding theatricals. Harvard degree, literary sensibility, a remarkable singing voice that almost nobody knew about. Fred illustrated his own books. He wrote children's stories. He was, quietly, one of the most intellectually accomplished people on the set of The Munsters, and he spent those years in green paint under a flat-top skull cap. When The Munsters launched in 1964, Fred was 37 years old. He and Al Lewis had already built their chemistry together on Car 54, Where Are You? And it carried over seamlessly. 72 episodes of Herman blundering through the suburbs, destroying furniture, bellowing with laughter, sobbing at the slightest emotional provocation, and failing to grasp anything about the normal world around him. It was physical comedy at its absolute finest. But after the show ended, Fred ran into a wall that many actors know well. He became impossible to cast. The moment he walked through a door, people saw Herman Munster. Directors were afraid audiences would laugh at the wrong moment. For a period in the late 1960s, he refused to even mention the show in interviews. The association was painful. Through the 1970s and early 1980s, he rebuilt himself through theater, Broadway, regional productions. He used that singing voice in ways film had never allowed. In 1981, he returned to Herman in the Munsters' Revenge TV movie and was reminded that the audience had never let go of him. Then something unexpected happened. In 1992, Fred Gwynne played Judge Chamberlain Holler in My Cousin Vinny. A small role, the perfect role. He played a deadpan, exasperated Southern judge with such precise comic timing that the audience roared. Not at Herman Munster, but at this character specifically. It was a comeback. It was a vindication. It was proof that he had always been more than the green makeup. And then, just over a year after My Cousin Vinny came out, Fred Gwynne was gone. He died on July 2nd, 1993, at his home in Taneytown, Maryland. Pancreatic cancer. He was 66 years old. His family was with him. It was quiet. In 2026, he would have been 99 years old, just 1 year short of a century. He didn't quite make it, but what he left behind, Herman Munster and Judge Holler, comedy and dignity, grease paint and Harvard, will not go away. Because the real monsters never die. And that's the full story of 1313 Mockingbird Lane, a family that terrified everyone they ever met, and somehow managed to be one of the warmest, most genuinely human families ever put on American television. As of 2026, only 2 members of the original cast are still with us, Butch Patrick and Pat Priest. Everyone else is gone, but every single one of them left something behind, in the films, in the memories, in the way you still recognize that theme song from across a room. If you grew up with the Munsters, or if you're just now discovering them, hit subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. And drop a comment below. Which cast member surprised you most? And did you already know any of these stories before today? We'll see you next time.